Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, friends. Uh, Thank you very much for attending this online meeting. So to begin with, I'll repeat that interpretation is available. So you click the globe icon at the bottom and you will have the options Spanish and also there is also what we say is written as Arabic is actually Bahasa Indonesia. So you can click that and also keep your mics muted. But at the same time, we want you to start using the chat box, asking questions, introducing yourself, because the shortage of time, unfortunately, we cannot introduce all individually, but please in the chat box. And then we have, of course, all your leaders present here. My name is Manoj Kurian, the coordinator of the WCC Ecumenical Advocacy Alliance, and we warmly welcome all of you for this online meeting, which is the global harvesting of the lessons learned in the joint planning in the country level meetings we had in India, Dominican Republic, Indonesia, and Jamaica, and this has been a very important exercise with precious support conducted by World Council of Churches, but with critical and precious support from the UNAIDS. We, with all of you, we conducted these 4 consultations with civil society actors, with the faith leaders, and engaging and re-engaging them in HIV response in the 4 countries. So the consultations had very important, critical and active participation from the Ministry of Health, the national HIV programs, the principal recipients, the sub-recipients of the Global Fund, and representatives of the country coordinating mechanism. And using the main recommendations of the Global AIDS Strategy and other global actors, all of us, you especially, develop plans for a sustainable HIV response, focusing on the inequalities that drive the epidemic. So we want to hear from you. What are the lessons? What did we learn by planning together? What is the way forward for the HIV response at the country level? Why now, and why should we do it together? These are some questions, and we'll analyze it today. And we look forward to hearing from you. And I will introduce the key people as they begin to speak. We have leaders from the leadership from the World Council of Churches and from UNAIDS. First of all, we will get words of welcome from Professor Dr. Isabel Apau Piri, who is the Deputy General Secretary of the World Council of Churches. She is also guiding and heading the whole section under which HIV comes. It's called the Public Witness and Diaconia. So all the work of social engagement at the level of UN, at the level of regional and also national level. So she is a very renowned theologian, deeply committed to the HIV response and to gender equity. We welcome you, Professor Piri.
Thank you very much, Manoj. Good afternoon, good morning, and good night to everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We thank you for your time and dedication to the HIV response. As you heard from my colleague, my name is Isabel Apau Piri. I've been working for the World Council of Churches since 2012 as Deputy General Secretary. In the World Council of Churches, HIV is an important piece of our work because it is part of the diaconal response of the Christian community. The HIV work in the World Council of Churches is very strong across Africa. And based on that experience, we want to expand to other continents and countries. Today, we gather to analyze the lessons learned doing joint planning between civil society networks, particularly networks of people living with HIV and affected communities, and interfaith actors in 4 countries: in India, Dominican Republic, Indonesia, and Jamaica. This initiative, as you have heard from my colleague Manoj, was possible with the support of UNAIDS, for which we are very grateful. We are deeply grateful for all your dedicated work, for the accompaniment and the loving companionship you provide to communities to overcome HIV pandemic. We are very keen to listen and to learn from your successes and challenges. We want the wider faith communities, civil societies and governments, and international community to be enlightened by your witness. HIV pandemic has not ended. After the COVID, the UNAIDS report In Danger, launched in July 2022, says that over the last 2 years, multiple collapsing crises, humanitarian, economic, and health crises had knocked back the global HIV response and seriously affected people living with HIV and most affected populations. This means resources have reduced, inequalities have widened, and we face millions of AIDS-related deaths of new infections if we continue in this path. This slow progress in the HIV response also happened in middle-income countries, whose countries that are not too poor, but not too rich either, to be considered priorities in global spaces. Middle-income countries are home to 71% of people living with HIV and 71% of people newly infected with HIV. These countries are in danger of being declared ineligible for international AIDS as global cooperation reduces. As it happened in emergencies, the most vulnerable are marginalized communities and are suffering the greatest impact. This is why we saw the need to engage and re-engage civil society networks and faith actors in the HIV response. We included relevant actors in the countries, such as the offices of the United Nations, the state officers, and actors such as the Global Fund through the principal recipients and the representatives in the country coordination mechanisms. We want to continue promoting and supporting these partnerships. We realize the challenge of the HIV pandemic is a huge one and is here to stay. That is why we need multi-sectional and multidisciplinary collaboration. There's great potential for these partnerships, the consultations and advocacy plans in the 4 countries are just some examples of what needs to happen in other countries and communities. So I welcome you to this activity and invite you to keep raising your voices for sustainable and joint HIV response. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabel, for this warm welcome. We consider this very important because it's a very clear voice from the leadership of the World Council of Churches in her and also the institutional commitment to the issue, and that we will continue in this new phase of the World Council of Churches post assembly. Now I want to invite Jacek Tisko. He is the focal person for the faith initiative in UNAIDS. And what is he leads, there is a huge program. It's called the UNAIDS PEPFAR Faith Initiative. But what is important is that Jacek is not only focusing on this particular program has been guided, and the resources do not come from PEPFAR. And so Jacek is deeply committed, and he leads the Faith Initiative, gives us a lot of guidance and support for this crucial work. Of course, he is also, he has got many other responsibilities. He's the focal person to deal with HIV in the post-conflict situation in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. So we are deeply grateful for your leadership, Jacek, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manoj, for a very nice introduction. I highly appreciate it. And equally big thanks to Isabel, because Isabel made my role much easier. She very well explained why faith partners need to be engaged in the AIDS response. So I will skip this part of my presentation, of my opening remarks. I limit myself to just a couple of observations. We are very often asked in UNAIDS and in wider UN system why we engage with faith within our mandates, within our respective mandates. And I think that the initiative that we are concluding today is one of these examples where we can say that globally we recognize, not only in UN but globally, that definitely over 90% of global communities, of country communities, of local communities, they are faith communities. They identify themselves or associate themselves with specific religion or religions. And for this reason, it's basic to be in contact, to be in dialogue, and to be in exchange of opinions about the reality. And here is coming the second part of the picture, that we also realize that in difficult times, like wars, we have now one war that has a huge global impact. We have several small wars which are equally wrong and equally unacceptable. We have several natural disasters. We have climate problem. We have plenty of other challenges. COVID was mentioned as one of them. We do see when the humanitarian or emergency problem is arising, that people start losing trust into the public institutions, and they move, including UN, and they start moving to the faith institutions for help and for understanding and for assistance. So obviously, we need, as the UN system, to be as close as possible to our faith partners who are considered as a part of the wider civil society movement, but with very specific advantages and value added. And for this reason, from the very moment of establishment of UNAIDS, more than 25 years ago, we committed to engage with faith partners in HIV response. And this leads me to my second point, which is we have faith partners, which are FBOs, religious leaders, faith communities, within the response for many, many years. We have, I don't know if you will see it, but we have a specific document elaborated together, which is our engagement framework on HIV, which kind of guides all of us and was prepared together on how we address HIV response within our additional values, advantages of partnership. We do see the role of faith partners widely recognized in the new global strategy for HIV/AIDS that was adopted last year by the General Assembly. The role of faith partners is also recognized by the political declaration that was adopted on that occasion. So we have a global mandate to work together in HIV response. And I should say that initiatives like the one that we will discuss today, Outcomes, is a great example of what is possible. Isabel very rightly noticed that based on World Council of Churches experience in a number of African countries. Now we are trying together to multiply this knowledge, experience, and skills into the wider world. And the 4 first countries were selected. They did their national part of negotiations. So big appreciations to country partners of 4 countries that took part in these exercises. Big appreciations, of course, to WCC and other stakeholders who participated in it. I do have the recognition of the validity, timeliness, and importance of such dialogues from our main global partners. These are PEPFAR and Global Fund. And I very much hope that by the end of today's discussion, we will be richer and we will be having like a specific ideas on how we will turn our new knowledge elaborated during these country consultations forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jacek. Thank you for your guidance and leadership. And we really appreciate your presence here, your guidance, and we look forward to the guidance to carry this process forward. And we need your the UNAID support to carry this forward. Now I would like to introduce Gracia Violeta Ros. She is the focal person leading the HIV work in WCC. She's a Bolivian advocate openly living with HIV for the past 22 years, deeply rooted in the community and representing the communities living with HIV as an advocate in the regions and internationally in the board of UNAIDS, in UNITAID, etc. But what is important is that she is also a woman of faith, and we are deeply appreciative that she has taken responsibility in WCC from February, and this series of consultations would not have happened because it was in a very difficult situation where we were intensively preparing for the assembly. But thanks to her dedication, her dynamism and commitment and uncompromising approach, she could bring this together, and she brings the voice of the community to the center of the ecumenical movement. We look forward to hearing from you the overall lessons learned from this project. Over to you, Gracia.
So much, Manoj. Good afternoon, buenas tardes, selamat malam. I don't know if I pronounce well that in Bahasa Indonesia. Thank you so much for the presentation. Dear Marcelo, can you share it now? It's already there. So I will give like a general view of what happened in the 4 countries. So this is a session to harvest. This means to bring together the learnings of these experiences in this project that was called a strategic engagement of civil society networks and faith actors in the HIV response in 4 countries. We can go to the next one, please. So what happened? With the support of UNAIDS, we conducted consultations in India in those dates that you can see on the screen, Dominican Republic, Indonesia, and Jamaica, in meetings that we call AIDS Back on the Agenda. Actually, we use kind of the title of that book, which I put on the left side of the slide, which is AIDS on the Agenda. It is a book by Sue. I can't read very well, but she's a person who writes about HIV, and she wrote this in order to put HIV back in the development agenda. Even today, HIV is about to fall down. And for us, advocates living with HIV and those who are committed, it is our duty to put it back on the table of discussion. The next one. So why? That was like the big question many people were asking on social media. What are you doing in these countries? Well, particularly after the COVID pandemic, and even before, we have seen how HIV lost the space globally. HIV was being left behind. Not just some people were left behind, but HIV as a topic. It's kind of, it lost its popularity. And that was produced in a reduction of funds, but that happened even more after the COVID pandemic. And that happened at local level in our countries, but also globally. And then we brought back this word AIDS. We know the damage that this word AIDS caused in the past. We know how much we have been discriminated with this word. And now we are not using this word anymore. Some people say they are only living with HIV. They are not living with AIDS anymore because treatment is more available now. But does that mean that AIDS has really disappeared or is finished in our countries? Unfortunately, what we saw in these consultations, and you can tell from your own experiences, is that AIDS, as the worst part of this epidemic, has not finished. And we see how people are still not having access to treatment, people are being denied medical care, people are being discriminated, etc. You know these stories. So we wanted to bring attention to this part of the epidemic, which is maybe we want to forget. It's part of the denial. And then the other question that people were asking us is, why are you doing this together? People with HIV, key affected populations, and the faith sector, the government, and the UN bodies, they are doing whatever they are doing. And yeah, that's okay. It is working very well. But in some of these countries, but also in other countries, we don't even know each other. We don't even have the phone number of the other partner. And there is great potential of what we can do together. You know, the challenge of this epidemic is so huge that none of us can respond to it alone. So we need to be together. Next one, please. So how we did this? We tried to bring a methodology of horizontal dialogue. We acknowledge the expertise of the communities of people living with HIV and affected populations, and the Ministry of Health and the UN agencies, and also the Global Fund and the principal recipient and the implementers of the Global Fund. We try to put them together. We try to break the power imbalances that sometimes there are in our countries, and you know of those. And we try to make this led by the communities, but also with the leadership of the faith sector. In 2 of the countries, we had networks of people living with HIV leading the implementation, and in the other countries, it was an organization related to faith. And it was also action-oriented and had a collaborative approach. But this is not something that came from Geneva. This is not something that an expert from Geneva brought. It is something that we decided, we analyzed on our realities in each one of the countries, and we created strategies that really work. Next one. So here are some key lessons from the 4 countries. This is a real synthetic summary. It is not comprehensive, so there are many more lessons that I could have put on these slides, but I only have 2 slides of these key lessons, because we will hear from the consultants in the 4 countries, and they will tell us more about the lessons in each of the countries. So first of all, the support for the HIV response is diminishing in a time when it should be strengthened. That is a terrible new one that was already in the report of UNAIDS. And as we are living this situation, new issues are coming to face us as a challenge. Examples are aging and HIV. So we had people with HIV who were young, but now we are going to become very old persons, you know, because treatment is so effective. And aging with HIV will bring a lot of issues related to health. It is not easy to reach 50, 60 years old and to be taking a chronic treatment, but also other issues like migration and HIV. You know, nobody takes care of migrants, unfortunately, and this is not a situation that is only happening in Africa. You can tell me about the situations in other regions. Particularly, we saw this topic in Dominican Republic, but we can also see it in the other countries as well. Here is a quotation about from a participant in Dominican Republic. He or she said, people living with HIV have medications for the next 3 months, but not food for the next 3 days. And this is talking about the poverty that many of people living with HIV are living. So people living with HIV are very poor. Most of them do not have any income. They don't have access to jobs. It's very difficult to get a job if you are open about your status, but also your employers will not be able to give you permission constantly. So this is a challenge, you know, for us to link the HIV programs with social protection and with whatever programs that are in the country that are intended to alleviate poverty. And other issues that we knew already are becoming of great attention to us. Pediatric HIV, the situation of children who are living with HIV, who have to be taken from the pediatric care to the adult care is a huge challenge, and nobody's speaking about children. Well, UNAIDS and WCC have an initiative to support the actions for pediatric HIV, but we need to do more. We should be already in a moment of elimination of pediatric HIV, but also adolescents and young people. We don't see enough funding to these situations. It does not always reflect in our funding priorities. And we also discussed that there are new developments in science and we should be using them for a better response to HIV. Some examples are the U equals U, you know, undetectable, untransmittable. Okay, we know this in the HIV community, but the rest of the world does not know about this. And this is a powerful tool to eliminate stigma, because one of the reasons why stigma is because people with HIV are supposed to be transmitting HIV. Also, other methodologies that we have now, like self-testing and index testing, should be taken very seriously with all the resources that are needed. The next one. And other part of lessons, which I already explained, the linking HIV with social protection and poverty reduction policies in the countries, and also the huge challenge of HIV prevention, including all the work on human sexuality and mental health and all the inequalities that are driving this epidemic. HIV prevention, we are not doing too much, and we have to be honest about it, and we have to accept this and just take the issue and do something about it, something that is really effective. Of course, international support is moving away from these countries, particularly because they are middle-income countries, but also national funding, which is something that happened because of the COVID pandemic and all the situations that happened after the pandemic. But as we move these resources local and global, we also need more accountability and to coordinate the efforts. There are some efforts in some of the countries that we will never see the reports of those investments. We need to coordinate, we need to unify the data and the information. We have to have a unified response to HIV. And between the faith sector and the communities of people living with HIV and affected populations, there has been a broken moment in what the participants call the shalom, the peace. It has been broken because of the stigma that has been around. But at this moment of the epidemic, churches have changed, faith leaders have learned a lot, and they are very ready to participate in a better way in the HIV response. So we need time to heal that relationship and to start using it and to nurture that partnership. And we must work with all the affected populations. I know this might be challenging for some faith leaders, but this is just what it is. This epidemic includes the communities that we have to serve. And I'm talking about gay men, sex workers, transgender women, young people, and migrants who are really vulnerable to HIV. We have one more, the last slide. So what next? So the stakeholders that participated in these consultations, they have an advocacy plan, which they did together, and they are all owners of this. It is not WCC, it is their plan, and they will implement it together. They have already been meeting to review it, to finalize it. Of course, none of these plans has funding, but we are going to try to support any efforts to fund those plans. And regarding WCC, we should continue having follow-up activities in these 4 countries and maybe conduct similar consultations in other countries. Some participants also ask us to conduct the same consultations in other regions of the country that have particular situations with an ethnic group or a situation caused by migration. And we need to study more the initiatives that are implemented jointly by the people living with HIV, the communities, and the faith sector. Particularly, there are some faith communities that are implementing projects of the Global Fund, and they are participating in the country coordination mechanisms. We need to study them and to bring them as an example to the world. So this is like a really very, very short summary of what we learned in the 4 countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gracia, for this. You have, in a very excellent manner, brought all the lessons together, and you have in a very short and succinct way brought out the key points. And thank you for that, and especially and be attending all the key consultations and accompanying them. Now, of course, the important part is that we want to hear the voices of these leaders who actually, consultants who facilitated this process. So this is very important. They will not be saying everything, but they will raise some key points. And of course, the reports are available. First, we look forward to listening to Dulce Almonte, who is the president of the Dominican Network of People Living with HIV, with HIV redo-VIH positive, with whom she has a long trajectory of experience. She has helped the implementation of the project and in Dominican Republic, and her leadership has been very critical. So we look forward to hearing some lessons learned from the consultation and bringing together of the lessons from Dominican. She will we'll make the presentation in Spanish.
I am trying to go back to my full screen. 1 second, please. Good morning to you all. I am Dulce Almonte from the Dominican Republic. I'm going to disconnect my mobile notifications. 1 second. So once again, I'm Dulce Almonte from Dominican Republic, and I was the person in charge of consulting the general support of this process. The activity was implemented in the Dominican Republic in the 14th and 15th day of the month. And I would like to highlight the great participation of the government officials in this initiative, and also their engagement in all the process, as well as that of the faith-based actors. But I would like to highlight that the collaboration was great among all the other stakeholders, especially the National Health Service and the Minister and Vice Minister of Health of the country, as well as other actors at the bilateral level. The main findings we identified had to do with the lack of data gathering in the country. We are trying to work right now to have a unique information system where we can find all the data available so we can work in a more organized manner. Another thing worth to mention was the fact that one of the key sectors that did not collaborate much was the faith-based actors. We also saw that one of the priorities were the drug users and people deprived from freedom, because they are the most forgotten in this process. The WCC share their concern because of this lack of resources to tackle the issue in the country and to be able to implement some activities in the country. They also highlighted the difficulties they found when talking about HIV in the country. What we try to do is to put this subject in the agenda so that the state can understand the importance of working in a coordinated manner with different stakeholders. In terms of advocacy, there was a plan that was implemented with drug users that was giving some good result. Also, other sectors were involved. We saw that most of the stakeholders found that this activity was very important. This gathering of different actors such as the church, the funders, the government, and other stakeholders was vital in order to see how this situation was dealt with in the country. As lesson learned, identified, is the lack of primary prevention. Also, the lack of capacity building in terms of employment for people living with HIV. We see that many people living with HIV don't have access to employment. We also saw a lack of PREPs and also of data gathering in terms of people living with HIV and people that are drug users and live with HIV. Also, there is a lack of prevention with people deprived from freedom. And these are the main gaps that we identified. And what we wanted to express, just to sum up, is the fact that we should keep on meeting with each other so we can talk about all these issues, especially at the national level, with the government, various agencies that fund national projects, so we can continue addressing the HIV work in the country in terms of prevention and also in ways of living with HIV and how to integrate them within the social system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dulce. It is really remarkable how in your meeting, you had excellent cooperation from the highest level in the country, and you have brought out some of the key issues: the gaps in FBO collaboration, the lack of data, the challenges in capacity, lack of capacity, and primary prevention. But clearly, you have given us good guidance on moving forward, and we are really grateful for that. Now we move on to Indonesia, and Dr. Alpinus Kamboji is the chairman of the Indonesian Interfaith Network on HIV/AIDS. He has an outstanding support of people living with HIV and with leaders of different faith groups in Indonesia. He has really helped in this activity. And also, of course, he has a great experience as a consultant on HIV issues and health issues broadly for the Conference of Churches in Asia. And now he continues to support the Conference of Churches in Indonesia and has interfaith approach close to his heart. Now, Dr. Kamboji will share the lessons learned from Indonesia. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Manoj. I want to share my presentation. Can you see? Yeah.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is the photograph of the participants where we conduct the consultation on 19 to 21 October 2022. The issues is to bridging the gaps. So we come up with together about the external problem and internal problem about HIV and AIDS. External based on the UNAIDS report, and also about the health financial, more competitive, and the target of UNAIDS is threatened. And as Gracia already mentioned about the impact of the COVID to shift HIV priorities. So internal problems that we have also gaps that lack of faith-based support on these issues, stigma, discrimination, and other gaps between key population and faith-based organization. So we come together with all the participants background from each committee of PGI member churches, from FBO's sectors, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindus, Confucius, and also from key population groups, NGO coalition, youth group, and Indonesian profession organization, as well as with the Minister of Health of Indonesia and AIDS Commission from the some provinces. And conclusion and the lesson learned, we found that first of all that we together agreed to enhance and maintain partnership and collaboration between FBOs, interfaith, and key population communities. Secondly, we committed to strengthening collaboration of engagement faith leaders. And broadly means brothers and sisters who living with HIV, also with affected population and government on the policy and joint action to overcome HIV and AIDS. And the other things, this is the starting point for FBOs to increase and update their leaders' knowledge on HIV and AIDS and disability issues. This is the new issues also we come up in this consultation. And we want to work together in reducing stigma and discrimination. The most important lesson learned that it's because HIV and AIDS is the serious and complex problems with which must put back on the agenda, where all stakeholders have to work together openly with good collaboration and without prejudice, so that no one will left behind. The implication of the consultation, we found that in practical implication for faith-based organization, that FBO was more aware about HIV and AIDS issues. Secondly, FBO's representative committed to advocate their leaders on HIV AIDS issues and disability issues. Third, the faith-based organization representative appreciated very well to the work of key population and committed to support. For NGOs, activists, and key population groups, they feel that they receive moral and spiritual support from FBOs for their ministry. And they are ready to collaborate, to partnership with the FBOs to reduce stigma and discrimination and to support with care, support, and treatment. The policy implication for the government and other international agencies, government, Ministry of Health, Indonesia Ministry of Health, ready to collaborate with all stakeholders in Indonesia. This is a good news for us. Even the international agencies also have good idea to support this work. HIV/AIDS and disability issues starting to get more attention from the consultation, and we found that Indonesian Interfaith Network on AIDS, this is also important organization to involve in these issues. So, what the commitment and recommendation? The commitment is we committed to advocate faith-based leaders to be more aware on these issues, and we want to working together on the practical action such as in the information, education, communication activities, in the issues of reproductive health for youth, uh, sexually transmitted infection clinic, and also care support and treatment. The third is we want to develop faith-based organization HIV/AIDS committee. Fourth, we want to work together for fundraising. Even we can also work with the Global Fund, CCM, and the others. And we plan together to have training of trainers for HIV educator and counselor. And then we committed to have a regular meeting with all stakeholders twice a year. And we have to work on the advocacy and education, like through seminars or webinar, and also to develop IEC materials. For example, now since this week in Papua, when where I work now, we start make advocacy with the pamphlet, with the spandoks, banners, and also we contact with the key population group like sex workers. We give information and take blood for testing. So this is also the real result of the consultation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Kamboji, for this very excellent and illustrated presentation. You have, first of all, before going on, we should say that here, I mean, we really, all participants from Indonesia, our hearts are with you, our thoughts and prayers are with you, especially with the after the earthquake in Java. And, this week we especially are praying for Indonesia, in this situation, and then we appreciate the commitment that and the different challenges that you face. But this consultation really showed the commitment and the readiness of the partners, and that's wonderful. And then you are clearly shown, very wide. And of course, Indonesia is such a vast country with thousands of islands, various languages, cultures. But so we need that strong leadership so that we can guide a future action. So thank you very much for the very clear presentation, and looking forward to follow this up. Next, we go to the experience from India. Ganesh Pereira. He's one of the youngest participants in the consultation, and he is working for the Human Touch Foundation in India, a very dynamic organization working with youth in India on various aspects of HIV. And let's hear what Ganesh has to share as a young person and as one of the workers in the forefront of this struggle. I hand over to you, Ganesh.
Hi everyone. Good evening from India. Myself, Ganesh Pereira. I am 17 years of age living with HIV. Currently, I am pursuing arts at +1 levels in a higher secondary in Goa. I have lived my childhood in an institution, and presently I am living with my grandmother in Goa. During my stay in the institution, I got introduced to the Human Touch Foundation, who gave me this opportunity to be a part of this national consultation. I was asked to prepare and put forth concerns regarding young people living with HIV and be their voice at this consultation. At the first, I doubted myself, as this was my first event of its kind that I was asked to attend, along with the responsibility to speak for my peers and friends and be their voices. All first, I felt pressured, as I felt like a person surrounded with new people other than the Human Touch Foundation. I know I then encountered Ria, my friend, who was also attending the conference with me. I was at peace and gathered some confidence. At the end of the first day, I came across many people living with HIV and working for HIV, and I was happy to see religious people also being part of it. As I grew up in one of the religious institutions, over the period of 3 days, many people interacted with me and asked me about myself. I was really excited, as all of them expressed loads of love and happiness in meeting me. As the session went by, I got more and more knowledge over HIV and how people like me are still fighting for their voice to be heard. I understood the power people along with religious organizations can do to make a change in life of many young people like me. Yes, I was nervous, yet but excited when asked to present my focus group discussion points across to the audience. My group members really supported me, and I put across the important points that concern the children and young people in India, one of which was the youth representation at the CCM and the notification of the rules in HIV Act in India to empower young people living with HIV to fight for their rights. Lastly, I would like to express my gratitude to the World Council of Churches.
I think
I,
we
I th-
lost him.
yeah, the connection was not ideal in where he's staying now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ganesh. I think your voice. I hope we heard most of what you would have liked to hear, and I hope you're still online. We really are grateful. We are so grateful for your leadership, and that very grateful also to the organizers. For all the organizers, and especially, of course, in India and the Human Touch Foundation, that they provided the platform for young people that their voices are heard. And this is so important for us. Thank you, a big thank you. And this will be a very important lesson for us. And we are committed as an organization, along with UNAIDS, along with our partners, to ensure a space for the young people and give you your space, the right space. Okay. Shall we proceed now with now we are looking forward to hearing from Jumoke Patrick, who is the executive director of the Jamaican Network of Seropositives. He is one of the delegates representing Latin America and the Caribbean NGOs in the UNAIDS Program Coordinating Board. Jumoke helped in the activity in Jamaica and had it's a tremendous meeting we had. And let us hear the key lessons from this experience, Jumoke. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Manoj. And good morning from Kingston, Jamaica, everybody. I hope you're hearing me.
Yeah.
You can just wave at me.
Yeah.
All right.
Marcelo, can we upload the slides of Jumoke, please?
Thank you very much, Violetta. So
Yes,
as we prepare to share the slides, just want to also recognize the other colleagues who possibly are participants on today's webinar that participated in that consultation here in Jamaica. So the presentation will really look at these 3 slides that I have here, just to give you an idea of the caliber of information and discussion that we had in this consultation here in Jamaica. So the first slide really looks at what did we learn from planning together here in Jamaica, and planning was inclusive in terms of the community of people living with HIV, the faith-based organizations represented through the Jamaica Council of Churches, as well as government partners and international development partners / civil society as well. So I have 4 points here. And what we learned actually is that the faith-based sector wants to be more involved in conversations and issues affecting the community of people living with HIV here in Jamaica. Many years ago, we did have a good, close relationship in terms of a national response with faith-based organizations working in the HIV response, but that changed significantly, or reduced, I should say, because of priority in terms of funding, because of priority in terms of where the HIV response was going, targeting more populations rather than a general HIV prevention, treatment, and care program. So we learned from that process that the faith-based sector wanted to do more and to be more involved, especially with the community of people living with HIV. Point number 2 looks at that the FBO sector is not homogeneous, and even though it's the church, even though it's believing in religion and Christianity, etc., their views and opinions were not all the same on various issues that were discussed. We have different types of religion, we have different types of denomination, and because of that, there were varied views and opinions in relation to discussions and conversations around HIV, especially when we talk about prevention, treatment, and care, and human rights related issues. Point number 3 looks at faith-based sector and church leaders welcoming and wanting to understand and be more aware, wanting the general public, especially advocates in the HIV response, to be more aware of discipleship and the doctrinal practices, so that advocacy and activism can be included in those when we better understand the approaches from these various denominations and from these various churches. So once we have an understanding, an idea of practices, of principles, of procedures when it comes to denominations, when it comes to various churches, then we'll be better able to penetrate those congregations more with messages that fits in terms of their own alignment as church leaders, as church, as faith-based organizations. And the final point is advocacy can be anchored in church services on a Sunday or a Saturday, and not necessarily having faith-based leaders coming on national television and going in the newspaper to talk about the various issues. And because advocacy is broad, advocacy can be from a grassroots level. And so we learned during that process that even in your regular Bible program, even in your regular Sunday or Saturday church service, you can have these types of conversations and discussions with the congregation, with members of your church. So that those were stuff that we learned during the process. Next slide, please. So what is the key way forward for the HIV? Sorry, I'm hearing an echo. All right. What is the way forward for the HIV response at a country level here in Jamaica? 3 points here. Better communication by faith-based organization around HIV advocacy for treatment and care services, as well as being a safe space for holistic healing and care for people living with HIV. there was a point during the consultation where the community felt that there was a point in time when the church had abandoned the community of people living with HIV, and they were being marginalized by a few of the churches here in Jamaica. And so this was something that they talked about, the participants talked about as a way forward, opening up congregations and having churches and faith-based leaders having more dialogue and involvement of people living with HIV in their services and in their congregation. Scaling up of capacity building for faith-based leaders, even though some of this is already happening here in Jamaica, the participants felt that this should be scaled up, and educating congregations, not only faith-based leaders and the ministers in charge of these various churches, but as well, these sessions will be involved, these sessions will include the involvement of PLHIV in education and sensitization session. And the final point, create a more coordinated and structured role for church FBO in general population HIV prevention that is centered around people care. That was also looking and moving forward here in Jamaica. And my final slide, next slide, please, really looks at why now and why together. According to the Stigma Index 2.0 that we did here in Jamaica as a network of people living with HIV, we found that over 54% of people living with HIV still feel guilty, ashamed, dirty because of their HIV positive status. So internal stigma and perceived stigma continues to be an issue here in Jamaica. And so we believe that with this, the impact and the effect of PLHIV visibility and grassroots level advocacy, the church definitely can help with. What do I mean by this, or what did we mean by this? Bringing people living with HIV into congregations, into communities, on pulpits to share their stories, to talk, for people living with HIV to be involved in these settings, for people who are part of congregation and churches to recognize and see somebody living with HIV, because we still find that many persons in Jamaica don't know somebody who's living with HIV and believe that people living with HIV looks a particular way or that they're very sick. So that would be a good way in terms of why now and what we can do together moving forward. Secondly, the messages, the sermons from church leaders on the pulpit influences how people will respond. And so more positive and uplifting messages during broadcasting will help to eliminate discrimination. That's another way. That's something we think that why not? So a lot of churches, a lot of ministers have television programs and radio programs that is broadcast nationally. And as well, we have large denominations here in Jamaica, such as the Seventh-day Adventist Church, such as the Baptist Church, etc. And so utilizing those leaders from a pulpit to influence the type of messages to provide awareness for their congregation is a way forward in terms of advocacy and the involvement of the faith-based organization more here in Jamaica. And finally, Jamaica is said to have the most churches per square mile, according to the Guinness Book of Record. And so penetrating these congregation and spaces will give mileage and awareness to HIV-related issues, especially those that promote equality and love towards better treatment, uptake, and adherence for people living with HIV. These are some of the things that were discussed during the 3 days, and moving forward, we have developed an advocacy plan, and the network of people living with HIV here in Jamaica is actually leading on that advocacy plan with the faith-based organization through the Jamaica Council of Churches. And so we're very much happy about that, and we're looking forward to the prospects of this advocacy plan. And actually, during the World AIDS Day week, we'll be having our first activity under that advocacy plan with one of the churches and the ministers that was a part of the consultative 3-day workshop. And I thank you.
Thank you so much, Jumoko. And you know, you have really driven to the clear problems, and you're showing a way forward. And we are really grateful that you were frank that you were able to engage with the church leadership, and the disparity of how it was initially when they were engaging in a broad sense, and now when we have to focus on communities, there seems to be a hesitation. So these are key issues, and I'm glad that you also going to the heart of the life of the church, and engaging with them, with the congregations, rather than just making speeches. You are demanding certain very high level asks, and I think the churches are with you, and we are really grateful for this input, and we look forward to engaging with Jamaica, and of course, and also we want you to be interacting with other regions as well. Now, friends, we have actually come to the time limit. I really beg your indulgence that we give another at least 15 minutes with your permission, because we have got a couple of more presentations. One is recorded. The next is Peter Borges, is the president of the Human Touch Foundation of India. Peter has a very long experience working with vulnerable children and adolescents. He's a person of faith, but also, he is so much trusted that he is also the state person responsible in the state to look at complaints of child abuse. So these are people who are really acknowledged, that their work in HIV has actually been acknowledged, and so his organization helped in this process. So I look forward to your inputs, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj, for your kind introduction. My appreciation and gratitude to World Council of Churches for giving us this opportunity to host this. So I'll go directly to the few points that I have put together in a slide, maybe my presentation. The next slide. Yeah, so what did we learn from planning together? So this consultation as such, gave an opportunity for to understand and, the key issues of the key affected population, especially the knowledge. HIV of late has evolved, and a lot of newer issues have come in the space. So this was for most of the faith leaders' knowledge. Especially, we gave a platform for key affected population to share their lived experiences. So with that, a lot of issues which were not known to the faith-based leaders at large came into discussion, especially in terms of prevention, psychosocial support. That was something which was discussed at a very deeper level. Social protection, again, even in the context of women who are aging with HIV and other emerging needs. So these were issues which were highlighted and discussed. And for faith-based leaders, these were some of them were very new issues which they felt are very important. Another issue which was highlighted is time and again there were talks of resource mobilization, how especially how we tap resources, and which is in this context there was a discussion that faith-based organization can meet this gap for to work with local level network, and not only look at resources from global fund or even otherwise. Next slide. Next slide.
You see slide number 3 there?
What's the way forward? Yeah, so there were a lot of things which were discussed, and one was it establishing a coalition. Although there existed many networks which dealt with interfaith work on HIV earlier, but for past few years there was no active work or no active programs by this network. So there were talks of discussion of reviving this network for at least to drive the advocacy responses. So also one more thing which again in the context of resources, especially this suggestion came from the representative of the National Council of Churches in India, that faith-based organization, apart from having other responsibilities, they should also look at social responsibility, faith social responsibility. So here the local networks could be resourced not only with funds and not only with, but also with infrastructure, manpower, and other things. So post consultation, this is something one of the faith-based organization which participated in the consultation got into action. There is this order of Chameleon Fathers which work with infirm and sick. So that's their ministry, and in India they run a lot of HIV programs, especially in South India, Karnataka. So they sent a delegation. They sent around 17 young people to Goa on their own cost. So we had a residential camp for the adolescents. So this was the first outcome which the one religious leader participating in the consultation got into action. Also, there was a strong consensus on especially advocating for new age prevention tools like HIV self-testing, PrEP, which still don't find mention in the national HIV testing strategy. So this is a way forward which we look especially to on a larger scale to work with network faith-based organization, engaging with the networks, especially in driving advocacy response. Now the last slide, why now and why together? So as a part of consultation, we developed a lot of metrics. We divided into subgroups. So there was metrics for developed for MSM. There was metrics developed for transgender. There was metrics which was developed for all other key affected population. Now this is going to be a guiding document, especially when it comes to collaboration. Especially when it comes to role the faith-based organization can play with the network. Especially there was discussion surrounding India has a national strategic plan which will go up till 2024. So this was discussed in alignment with the global AIDS strategy by UNAIDS, and especially how faith actors can play a big role to strengthen some of the efforts which will ultimately end AIDS by 2030. So there was also another action which have also happened after the consultation. So there was a lot of local faith-based leaders who were also there. So Goa Diocese as such is promoting a lot of work and dialogue with the LGBT community. And so the global network of Rainbow Catholics, one of the global organizations who had represented on the local opening ceremony of the consultation, is also in touch with us how to work as a network with the LGBT community in India at large. So these are the few things which I like to highlight, and thank you again for World Council of Churches and UNAIDS for getting this organized. I'm sure this is going to India with being a huge subcontinent with a lot of faiths around. This consultation comes at the right time when we were like AIDS or HIV at large was not discussed, and this is going to revive all the efforts in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for your leadership. And really, it's amazing. India, such a vast country, and you, in your consultation, you brought people from even the remotest part, and we are very glad that you lifted up the gaps, and we are glad to hear that there is already follow-up, and that you have a plan, and that you have great partners in UNAIDS and with the CCM. We look forward to your leadership. Now we have a recording from Javier Nelson, who is part of the UNAIDS staff in Jamaica. But he is also a member of the community, and therefore a long-time advocate supporting people living with HIV. So he unfortunately cannot be present, but we have a video where he speaks why faith sector is needed in the HIV response.
Faith-based organizations are important. They are key agents of socialization and can help to engender change in our communities. Most certainly, faith-based organizations have played an important role in the HIV response in many countries, including Jamaica. Importantly, they have a key role to play in ending inequalities, ending stigma and discrimination against people living with and affected by HIV, and importantly, contributing to the end of the AIDS epidemic as a public health threat by 2030. We cannot achieve the global AIDS targets without faith-based organizations. In Jamaica, faith-based organizations have played a critical role in the HIV response when the first case was diagnosed in Jamaica. They have helped in providing treatment, care, and support, and importantly, over the last few years, they have been a key part of the advocacy for improvement in laws and policies, ending stigma and discrimination, and building the capacity of faith-based leaders to address gender-based violence and HIV-related issues in their organizations. However, for the church to be successful, for faith-based organizations to be successful, they have to do this in partnership with communities of people living with and affected by HIV. As the Global AIDS Strategy says, we can do nothing without the community of people living with HIV. They must be at the center of the HIV response in every single way, from advocacy to implementing programs, designing programs, and importantly, evaluating them. I think the value of having people living with HIV involved in such activities really help in grounding faith-based leaders in an understanding of the key challenges, the unique challenges people living with and affected by HIV face in their daily lives as it relates to stigma and discrimination, accessing treatment and care, and importantly, enjoying their human rights. The value of having this partnership in the Jamaican space is that for a long time, the faith communities have been involved, but their role has not been as visible as it used to be. There is need for greater push, there is need for scaling up of the activities that they do, and there is need for greater visibility. Importantly, given the unique role and advantage that churches and other faith-based organizations have in the Jamaican space, they have a critical role to play in amplifying the messages about ending inequalities, ending stigma and discrimination, and ending AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. We cannot achieve the global AIDS targets without them. And so it is important to have faith-based organizations and communities of people living with HIV coming together to work jointly to develop plans and activities and undertaking them to ensure that every single individual in this country will be able to know their status, will be able to access treatment, care, and support services if they are HIV positive, and importantly, that they can enjoy their human rights without any fear of distinction.
Thank you very much, Javier. And this is, really reminding us the importance. He has reminded us the importance of to engage people living with HIV and the communities at the center of all the work. This is very, very good. And we will keep that in mind, coming from a community member and coming from UNAIDS. We have three, let's give a few minutes, 5 minutes or so for the questions. If you have any answers, there are three questions Sonia is posing. Sonja is posing. Question one, do you have examples of poverty reduction strategies embedded in the HIV response? The second is, how would you describe the move from broken moment to church engagement participation? I think we have, and third question is, academia seems to be disengaged from FPO response. Do we have any suggestions in improving and plans to engage key actors? Would one of the resource persons have thoughts on these questions? Please, the floor is open.
Yeah, thank you. If I may start, I would like to address, and thank you, Sonia, because these are excellent questions, and they are touching very important aspects of the response and of the simple fact of why faith partners are important for the response. So let me start with the last one, because last one is relatively easy. There are several academic institutions in the world. Unfortunately, and this is maybe a personal view, but also definitely an institutional view. Unfortunately, most of them are in the north, in the global north, but we do have several of them very strong in the global south. That are dealing with research, documentation, and monitoring and evaluation of the impact of faith-based organizations and faith partners at large into different parts of the global development agenda, including HIV. Specifically for HIV, I would mention, for example, Cape Town University, that is doing great documentation work on issues around HIV, recently COVID, other health issues. These are coming out of the famous Lancet publication, Why Global AIDS Response Will Not Manage Without the Involvement of Faith Partners into it. So this is if you are interested, please contact me. I will connect you with several academic institutions that are doing this work. I also strongly recommend that you visit the Joint Learning Initiative website, which is the institution that is definitely making a huge input into documenting the impact of faith partners into the development. Your first question, examples on, if I understood it correctly, examples of HIV response vis-a-vis the poverty reduction. From the top of my head, I remember that we had several small scale, but also bigger scale initiatives across Africa during the first 10 years of the existence of the joint program, which were addressing the issue. It was coming from the simple fact that was already mentioned at the start of this conversation today, that yes, we have treatment, but we have no food. So treatment is useless because tablets will not work if my stomach is empty, as simple as this. So we were actually, based on that discussion, which is like a permanent discussion and continuing still, we had to include into the joint UNAIDS Family World Food Program, which is mainly field-based organization providing food support to people, and to merge our aspect of HIV serostatus with the needs of survival of a patient or her or his family. So this is something that definitely needs to be addressed and is addressed. Of course, during the last couple of years, it is a huge challenge, and it was mentioned almost in all presentations that that why now this actually the methodology around why now is highly welcomed, because we do see, that global/regional prioritization is removing HIV response from the visibility it still is necessary. Yeah. So we do need to go back to multi-country, multi-stakeholder approaches that will definitely address different aspects of a bigger problem, or around humanitarian emergencies, or around some other emergencies. But like within this addressing that the aspect of HIV is addressed, taking into account the needs of people like who are on treatment or who are affected by HIV, and these needs should include all aspects, including the one that is related to poverty as a basic one for the success of the response. And the second question, since I don't see it anymore on the screen, remind me please, Manoj, what was the second issue?
How do you describe the move from broken moment to church engagement participation?
Yes, yeah. But I like broken moment. I like very much the formulation. We are using the concept of religions driving HIV-related stigma against religious leaders championing the process, the proper AIDS response. Yes. So within this concept, I would say that with help of such organizations like WCC, we managed throughout the years to provide, because I heard in one of the presentations this formulation, we educate faith partners. I don't think it's a right terminology, yes, that we will be educating faith leaders. Yes, we should, and we are doing it, but this is not only what, but also how, yes? And I think this how element is extremely important in getting to the success story. We cannot go as a group of activists or group of UN like civil servants to a church leader, to a bishop, to a priest, to whoever, like with our kind of preaching, even if our information is based on evidence. Yes, we need to find the proper environment in which our faith partner will be willing to receive us and to listen to us in order to make our joint goal really possible for the implementation. From this point of view, I would say that what I'm hearing from all 4 countries is like a really most encouraging part of the exercise, that this discussion is kind of opened or renewed, like in case of Jamaica, which is very, very strong signal. And we do not consider these 4 country meetings as just meetings for the sake of the meetings. No, we are considering them as a recommitment that will be further supported by WCC, UNAIDS, and other partners, because it is crucial for, let me simplify it, for the realization of the objectives of the global AIDS strategy. So I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacek. I mean, there have been 2 written comments that have come, which of course says, Ursula said she's writing 3 papers. Of course, We will share, if you can send us this more information, we can share with the whole network. Thank you, Ursula. And also Sandra, who raised issues, that the FPOs and our leaders should step up and do more advocacy. It's a challenge, and more do it in an integrated manner. And thank you from the message from Moluka, and where you have so much of experience. And thank you, Jacek, for your very insightful responses. We are very much tight for time. So, Gracia, you have been accompanying these 4 consultations. How would you handle these questions? Some thoughts in a few
I had
minutes.
some ideas about these questions. The first question, how to link HIV to social protection. I have seen recently in the Global Fund C19's RM grant, which is the grant for the COVID situation, that they approved some food support for people living with HIV in consideration that people with HIV have informal jobs and were not able to go to the streets and sell their things, and then therefore they couldn't pay their meals. Also, they in Bolivia, I saw they are going to open a house for transgender women. So in these C19 RM grants of the Global Fund, there are some experiences of linking HIV to social protection, but also UNAIDS has done a lot of consultations on this. And the main recommendation that I happen to hear from our colleague David Chipanta is that we must integrate in a sustainable way people with HIV in the list of populations that are in that particular country for a policy. Say there is a social protection measure for women who are pregnant. We should be sure that women living with HIV who are pregnant are not excluded, rather included. So this means reviewing these policies in each country and making sure that no criteria excludes people with HIV. The other question, how to move from the broken moments to the partners, to the engagement, to the participation. In Jamaica, the faith leaders decided to say an apology to the communities. And that was the first step. And I think that's the way to go. We don't need an apology everywhere. We just need to come together and listen to each other. And in this horizontal methodology, and having no dialogue between the knowledge of different stakeholders. Yeah, the faith sector have one expertise, the government has another expertise, the UN agencies and the communities, we all have our expertises. We have to bring them together and decide to act together. I think the willingness is there. What we learned in the 4 countries is that people are willing to reconnect or start from zero, if that was the case. So maybe this is the moment, really, this is the moment. We just need to create the platform to bring these people together. And if there was some issues in the past, we also must acknowledge that everyone changed. Faith leaders who used to discriminate have learned a lot. So I think we are so ready to move from the brokenness moment to the moment of participation. And regarding the question of academia, there are some academia that are doing research on HIV and spirituality or religion. One example is what WCC is doing with support from UNAIDS PEPFAR, which is a study of congregations responding to HIV stigma. This study is going to be published maybe mid-year next year. For now, it has the experiences of 7 congregations responding to HIV stigma, and we hope to include even more congregations that are doing locally grounded activities to respond to HIV stigma. So that's all.
Thank you so much, Gracia. Thank you for your leadership and for guiding us and giving us these key points. Friends, we have to come to a conclusion, but number 1 point, we are not just ticking a box. WCC and UNAIDS are not just ticking a box to do this. We are committed to follow up. And of course, we need resources. You need resources. But it's clear from your consultations that we also need mutual accountability and commitment. We need leaders need to step up. We need to open up the infrastructure and the leadership, the tremendous amount of influence that faith communities have. And we need to bring faith, the people living with HIV, to the center of our discussions. And they need to be at every stage given attention and given the lead, and they should be allowed to take the leadership. And of course, youth voices are so important. There is a lot of potential, we heard, for increasing the partnerships. There is clear signs of people being left behind. We need to coordinate our efforts and be mutually accountable. And we need intersectoral, collaborative, and multidisciplinary work. Friends, we have to come to an end here, but I deeply appreciate all of you, each one of you from the 4 countries, your leadership, and also to UNAIDS for the support, and for WCC leadership. There are Dr. Isabel Apao-Piri. She is here with us and throughout, and giving us, supporting us. She's ending her term here actually from 2012, and she is leaving with a solid program of HIV, and she has ensured that HIV is a very clear pillar in the upcoming commission, and we really are grateful from all our communities to your leadership, Isabel. And thank you, Jacek, and thank you, Gracia, for coming and bringing the voice of the community to the highest level in the ecumenical movement. We are grateful. We will conclude. And of course, we are so grateful for the interpreters and for Marcelo and for Gregoire, who are from our communications department, who have made this possible. So as we conclude, let me, it's a faith-based meeting. So I would say that we, as we conclude, of course, we also want to thank all the 4 consultants, the consultants who have done the work in the countries, and for Gracia to taking the lead through these difficult times. So as we conclude, let us give a 10 or 15 seconds of silence of remembering all the people who we have lost and all the people who are suffering. 10, 15 seconds of silence, of spiritual silence. Thank you, my friends. Thank you for this time, for this wonderful opportunity, and for making and participating. We will be following up, and we have your email addresses. We will send you the summary report. And thank you, Jacek. Thank you, Isabel. Thank you, Gracia, and our consultants. Bye-bye. Good night. Good afternoon.